most recently, we've seen among other leaders who are attacking the current prime minister, but failed to point out something that was critical that's impacting black people in Ukraine. Mayor Brown stood for our community. Mayor Brown has always stood for the black community, and I believe it is time for us to stand by him as he fights to be the leader, the next leader of the Conservative Party, and most likely the next Prime Minister of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to welcome Mayor Brown.
Well, thank you, Idris, for organizing this event. We've had a whirlwind of events today in the greater Vancouver area. I believe we're doing 20 stops today, and so it is a challenging schedule. I apologize for the fact we're running behind schedule, but grateful for your patience. And let me say, Idris has been one of our champions in the city of Brampton. When I ran for mayor, he was one of the powerful voices in the community that really helped uplift me in what was an exciting campaign. I've been elected now for 22 years at all three levels of government, and started municipal, then went to do 3 terms in the House of Commons, and then went on to be leader of the Ontario Conservative Party, and then to Brampton, where I've been serving as mayor. And my brand of conservatism is really about inclusive conservatism. You know, as I like to say, it doesn't matter who you love, where you're born, the color of your skin, what God you worship. I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed in this country with no barriers, with no discrimination. And frankly, that is the story of Canada. And if you're not Indigenous, everyone's story in this country is one of immigration. And I should note, and we have a proud friendship with the Nigerian community in the city of Brampton, but for me, it goes beyond the city of Brampton. I first went to Nigeria in 2007 when I was with the Canadian government. They wanted a speaker to attend the Commonwealth meeting that was happening in Abuja. And when I went to Nigeria and went to Abuja the first time, I fell in love with the country, the warmth of the people, the sense of community, and so when a few of my friends in Brampton suggested I should go back and build an economic development effort for the city focused on Nigeria and Africa, I jumped at the opportunity. And as Idris mentioned, we had the One of Ife visit our city, had a beautiful celebration of the Nigerian culture. But when I went back to Lagos, I went back, it was 2020, right? And the first time I went was 2007. I was blown away by the economic development, the momentum that we're seeing in Nigeria. I went to visit a few of the tech centers, and the tech scene in Lagos is inspiring. And frankly, too often it gets overlooked. The opportunities, I think, are limitless. I had a chance to tour Nollywood too, which was a whole new sector that I got to learn about. And so it was just a fascinating visit, and I love to see Canada with a much larger presence in Nigeria. But back to this leadership, it really is an opportunity to redefine modern conservatism. And Idris is right. This leadership could very likely pick the next Prime Minister of Canada. You know, governments normally last 7 to 8 years in Canada, and the Liberal Party is already at the 7-year mark. Next election will be in 3 years, and so there'll be momentum for change. And right now the party needs to decide what type of change do we want to present to Canadians. My opponent, Pierre Poilievre, is trying to hold rallies that are very Trump-like and is offering a more extreme version of conservatism. And I'm challenging that. I don't believe that's where Canada should go. I believe we need to build an inclusive big tent Conservative Party. I do not accept the fact the Conservative Party has to follow what we've seen in the United States. I believe we're better than that in our conservative movement in Canada. And that's what I have expressed throughout my time in public service. You know, when I think of the type of Conservative Party that I want to double down on, I want to double down on the Canadian dream. And the Canadian dream is anything is possible in this country. Anything is possible in this country. And where I see barriers to that dream, I want to tear them down. I look at foreign credential recognition and the fact that there's a lot of talent in this country that is not being used because of barriers. And whether it's a doctor or a nurse or engineer, they can't use their God-given talent. That is wrong. I look at our immigration system. It was immigration that built Canada from day one, that built Canada. And right now we have a massive skill shortage in IT, in construction, transportation, logistics. The list goes on and on. And yet we have the longest backlog in Canadian history, over 2 million. Our immigration system can be better. The lottery system is wrong. The length of delay for family unification and the ability to bring in new talent is too long. And frankly, I think it is selfishly in Canada's interest to expand our immigration system. When they asked at the Conservative leadership debate who wants to expand Canada's immigration system, everyone hummed and hawed, and I put my hand up and I said, I do. Canada needs it. You want to unlock the economic potential of Canada? You need immigration. Don't shy around about it. We need immigration to continue to build on the greatness of our country. You know, I think we won the lottery living here in Canada. I do. I think we won the lottery. This is the greatest country in the world. But we have a duty to maintain that special aspect of our country. And so when I see barriers to the Canadian dream, I think that's our obligation to tear those barriers down. And what I'm fighting in the right wing of this country is very different than this Canadian dream. Did anyone hear about the comments that came out just yesterday from Pat King? So my adversary in this race, Pierre Poilievre, has been working with some of the leadership of the truckers' convoy. And I called them out for some of the derogatory commentary that has been directed at the mosaic of our country. And just yesterday, a video emerged from Pat King, who said the same vile comments that we heard in the Buffalo shooting. You know the Buffalo shooting just recently?
Yesterday? Yes.
Yeah. And the person was talking about, Eddie, you got the wording. What was it called again?
Murder. Weight replacement.
Weight replacement theory. And so this psycho in Buffalo who took lives and had a manifesto, white replacement theory. Pat King is doing a video. He didn't get caught doing a video. It was not some secret camera. He literally recorded himself saying the same thing. And so those that are working with him, I denounced. And I said, you cannot allow hate to exist in a political party. If you create alliances with those that preach hate, you wear those consequences. You can't share that. You can't play footsie with hate in this country. If you want to be a modern, inclusive, conservative party, and that's what I aspire to build, there is no oxygen in the room for hate. It is not.
And sir, what can you do about things like that? About gun control and stopping people from being murdered? Black people, Canadians have guns too. There's crazy people up here. I would just like to know how you, my friends, I don't want to see them hurt ever.
Well, the starting point, there's two aspects to that answer. The starting point is no one in this country should turn a blind eye and be silent in the face of that type of bigotry and hate. And it needs to be called out and exposed. When you sweep it under the carpet and pretend that it's okay, that's called acceptance. If you don't call it out, it's called acceptance, and that's wrong. And no mainstream political party should accept that within our midst. In terms of gun control in our country, the reality is we have a problem with the smuggling of illegal firearms. And right now, I know in the GTA, and I can get the stats here, but in the GTA, 90% of the firearms that were used in homicides were illegal smuggled firearms. And I don't want to scare you, but criminal organizations have become more sophisticated than ever before. And I've sat on a police board, I get the briefings from the chiefs. You know, we have an incident just last week where there was a drone device that took over firearms across the border. Right now we have hydraulics that get put in transport trucks where you'll see drugs and firearms smuggled into the country. I saw one briefing where there was an individual, a cross-border shopper, a soccer mom, just going to get do some shopping in the U.S., and they put a compartment under her car and a GPS device and picked up the firearms when she didn't even know that she had smuggled them. criminal organizations have become more sophisticated. And I believe that the government, law enforcement, needs to become more sophisticated as well. And so that is some of the work I would do on law and order. But back to the Conservative Party, my goal is to build a Conservative Party that will one day be the government of Canada that looks like Canada. And Canada is a beautiful mosaic, and the Conservative Party has to reflect that. And I look at the Conservative Party today, I look at the caucus, I look at the Senate, frankly, I look at the government of Canada, upper echelons of the government of Canada, and I do not see Canada. And so part of my commitment, and we signed a pledge, only leadership campaign to sign a pledge that Idris will share with you, to the Afro-Caribbean community, to say how we are going to change the face of government, how we're going to change and honor commitments to the community. And I can tell you a little bit about the city of Brampton. When I got elected, I had community meetings, and one of them was, a few of them were at Idris's home. And the one question I was asked is, the mayor's office doesn't have a single person from the community in the city of Brampton. So immediately when I got elected, now over 20% of our office is from the community. My director of operations is an incredibly talented young woman who has worked for me for years, and family comes from Zimbabwe. We set up an equity office in the city of Brampton, where we added a senior advisor to the planning department from the community. We're the first city in the country to set up an economic development desk dedicated to Africa and the Caribbean. And the reason I say that is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so some of those moves that are unique within municipal politics, those are the type of initiatives that I would like to embark upon on a national level. What can we do? What can we do to create a better environment for opportunities and contributions for every Canadian in the government of Canada? And I'm glad Idris mentioned what happened in Ukraine with the border at Poland. And I was proud to speak out against it. But for me, it's not just speaking out against some of the systemic racism that existed. The fact that that need to be called out is the issue in the first place. And so let me expand upon that. Frances in my office, that young lady I was talking about, told me, and she said, "Nothing for us without us." And that stuck with me. I'll tell you why it stuck with me. Is if we have foreign affairs officials who are looking at how to handle a volume of refugees, or if you have, frankly, any government issue, if you have the community there at the table, mistakes like that don't happen. And so when I see systemic racism, I call it out. But I hope we get to a point when we don't need to call out decisions like that, because the community is at the table. And when that happens, the government looks like the country. And not just outside government, inside government. So outside you see the elected officials and the Senate and the cabinet ministers. And I want outside, the outer face of government, to look like the country. But also inside government, because a lot of the machinery of government is the deputy ministers, it's the senior bureaucrats. And so the journey we're on is to make sure that we have a government that is turning on all four wheels for all Canadians. And I just want to thank my friend Idris, who would make the long journey out here. You know, it says something when you have a friend who's willing to fly 5 hours to come and get participation in this leadership race. We've done this before. I'm taking on the establishment candidate. The establishment candidate is Pierre Poilievre and his supporters like Pat King. And the media would probably put him as the front runner. But here's the good news. What I've learned in Ontario is that the media don't get a pick who the winner's going to be. What determines who's going to be the winner is determination and work ethic. And right now, we're going to pull off the same thing we did in Ontario. When I ran for the Ontario Conservative leadership, I went into that race with 3%. The front runner was at 71%, and by election day, I won with the largest margin of victory in Ontario history. And I know you see those Pierre rallies right now on the TV, and it looks like a Trump rally. By the way, how do you have 5,000 people and have zero diversity? But that's another thing. And so he has these Trump-style rallies, but he's not signing up memberships. He's catering to the existing base. Right now, we're out there doing 20 events like this a day, and we're signing up new memberships. And right now, we're signing up more new memberships than every campaign in this race combined. And so for me, what's happening on the ground is something the national papers don't see, just like they didn't see in Ontario. And so my request of you is help us on this journey. Help us at this fork in the road for conservatism in this country. If you could go back in time when Donald Trump won the Republican primary, and if he could have said, and that fork in the road, the Republican Party could have taken a different path, you would have jumped at that opportunity. And right now, we're at that fork in the road in Canadian conservatism. We do not need to go down the route of extremism. We can be the party that says we're going to fight for all Canadians in a proud, inclusive, progressive manner. And so that's what I need your help with. And I just want to say that I'm grateful that you have many places you could be on a beautiful night when the weather is stunning, but you chose to be with us here tonight to hear this pitch. And I hope that you'll let Idris convince you to be part of this journey. And I'm grateful for your attention. And now I'm happy to take any question you may have. Yes, first question.
Okay, thank you.
Afterwards, you had mentioned something about immigration. You said you don't like the current system. What would you do differently? I've seen in the case of Afghanistan, the whole Canadian system government tried to see how they can rescue people. It happened in Ukraine as well. If you look at what is happening in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, civil war going on currently, humanitarian color all over the world, but not doing anything about Tigray region. People are dying daily. So what would you do differently if you become the Prime Minister of Canada?
So on immigration, I would expand our immigration system. I believe that we can offer Canada as a land of opportunity and freedom for more. I look at our immigration system and I say, why is it more difficult from a student coming from Africa to come and learn in Canada than it is from elsewhere? I ask about the delays. I ask about the delays and the double standards in visitor visa or the sponsorship of parents. There's clear double standards, and the example that you gave in terms of humanitarian crisis, yes, I believe Canada should step up and help when it comes to humanitarian crises that exist in the world. I was actually in a debate just 2 weeks ago, a war of words in the National Post, because I made the point, I'm glad that Canada is helping in Ukraine. I made this point, I'm glad that Canada is helping Ukraine. Within a week and a half, we set up an expedited refugee system. But it begs the question, where there's a will, there's a way. And how about other humanitarian crises that happen around the world? And Canada can do more on refugees. And I'll give you an example. You look at the 10 countries in the world that have the most refugees. Number one is Turkey, number two is Lebanon, and the list goes on. But some of the most prosperous countries in the world have done the least when it comes to help. And I believe, like you, I come from a Christian background, and I believe that in the face of adversity, you show love. And I believe when there's humanitarian crises around the world, I want Canada to show love. I want us to be there. And I think some of the finest moments in Canadian history have happened when we've stood tall in those moments. And you look at the Vietnamese boat people when they fled the fall of South Vietnam, and Canada was a land of safe harbor. I look at the Tamil genocide. Look at principal moments in Canadian history. Brian Mulroney standing up against apartheid in South Africa. There are examples of when we've stood tall as a country, and I feel right now in some of the greatest humanitarian crises, the Canadian voice has been absent. The Canadian willingness to help has been absent. In terms of issues like abortion, I have said my government will not revisit the abortion debate, but I would respect the conscience rights of individual MPs to vote their conscience. But
they say charity begins at home. We're talking about foreign issues, how you're going to intervene. I'm talking about our people based in Canada. I once put our mayor here, resident mayor here to tax. In the whole of Surrey, where we live now, I find only 5 servants in the local council. 5, black. 5. What is your strategy to integrate us? We've been here for many years. Nigerians here, at least, the first Nigerians have been here for about 85 years in this place. You can't find in the whole of Surrey, I don't think there's any Nigerian in the local council. No, not Nigeria, but I have 5. So, integration, because we need to be given a platform. It's not, Nigerians are the most educated people in North America. You can check statistics. But we're not given the platform to excel. We apply to jobs, our names are funny. The only way black people breaking or Nigerians break into the system here is through sports. And that's because of you can't hide that. But in academics, we are doing well. But we're not given the chance. So what is your strategy?
I think this is a great...
Mayor Brown, sorry if I may just come with your question. With the 10 points, for those of you who received the 10 points, it compiles the achievements of Mayor Brown, which has never happened in the city, in most cities. We have the unit, which is anti-black racism unit, the first of its kind in the city of Brampton. We have the equity office, the first of its kind in Brampton. Mayor Brown was the first person to help in supporting the fight to end systemic racism, which is a fight I led with the Peel District School Board that has made the lives of all young black children in Peel, which has never been resolved by any other government. So all of these things are included in the 10-point agenda. I just thought as somebody who was part of the crafting of this and some of the things Mayor Brown has done that has never been done before. And the big one is the FDI trip, foreign direct investment trip. It's never been done by any government, municipal, provincial, or even federal. So these are things that, for me, taking part in this is to let my people know, as a resident of Brampton, this is what we've been able to do in Brampton. And if he can do this in Brampton, we'll be able to replicate the same everywhere. A part of one of the things we've asked Mayor Brown that should he become the next Prime Minister is to look into the population of the black population in this country. Because with the numbers, brings all that. So I want our people to see the line between economic prosperity and political engagement. So with those things, for those who haven't seen that 10-point agenda, I'm willing to share them. I just thought, as somebody who has lived this, who is seeing this, these are some of the things that are not happening in Mississauga. You can look at it, not happening in Mississauga, not happening in Toronto. Brampton has been the #1 city that has led in this area.
I want to add to your question. I think it's the job of political leaders to create opportunities as well. And I look what happened in Alberta. In Alberta, we've got the Nigerian Canadian and Casey Madu. Anyone know Casey Madu?
Yes.
He's now the Minister of Justice. And the Conservative Party in Alberta, made a deliberate effort to try to build a partnership with the Nigerian community. Right now, you see the Cabinet of Canada, and you see the House of Commons, you don't see there might be one MP in London, right?
Yes, in London.
In London. But you see the House of Commons, you don't see the community. So my goal would be to deliberately look for opportunities for the community. And frankly, if I lead a government where I don't see the Nigerian community in my government, I would consider myself as having failed in my mission to reflect the mosaic of the country. And so, who knows? If Canada is going to aspire to do good for the Nigerian community, I want the community at the table.
What about all Africans? I mean, Nigerians are good people, but Africa's a big country, almost as big as this one. We can take many people here.
So I would say that the Nigerian community is one of the largest diasporas in Canada. If you look at the Nigerian community, it is obviously much larger, and that's why I'm speaking specifically about the Nigerian community. But I would note I have done a number of campaign events with other smaller countries and diaspora communities. I was in Winnipeg. I did a round table with the Sierra Leone community. I've done events with the Zimbabwean community, and the Guyanese community and the Kenyan community. But this is the Ghana community. This is obviously, I say, the Nigerian community would be the largest diaspora community from Africa.
Mostly on the West Coast?
No, everywhere in Canada.
We are 8,300 plus 5 years ago here in BC.
Yeah. How much?
8,300 5 years
Only 8,000?
ago. In
Hey, Chris,
BC.
how big is it in Ontario?
It's quite large.
Yeah.
It's huge. We're in Brampton alone, we're north of 5,000.
Yeah.
But
In Peel, we're quiet. So the black community based on 2016 census, the black community in Peel, in Brampton, it's about 21.
yeah, I believe the Nigerian community is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I'm just going to answer your question. I was there a few weeks ago, and I just want to let everyone know that there's a long history. I was born in Toronto of the black community. There's a West Indian community. There's a long, rich history of black serving and whatnot. But the black community has always been loyal to Trudeau's father from when I grew up, because he brought everybody in. That's what we would say. But as I grew older, I realized that a political party needs to represent much more than just spending a lot of money like a drunken sailor, because we have to be really interested in our economic prosperity as well, because that brings a seat at the table. We need leaders as brave as Patrick to speak up. It's not about serving red meat to a base and ginning them up on racist issues, which I'm disappointed to hear, and I'm glad you're in the race, because it disappoints me that the Conservative Party is sending out a message that does not resonate with everyone. Okay, you look at the country, blacks, LGBTQ, everywhere. First Nations, we're a country that's a mosaic. So the Conservative Party has actually a lot to offer. There's Sir Donald Oliver, who served as a minister, and Lincoln Alexander. There's a rich history, and we just need to educate ourselves, and we also need to run for diverse parties. Okay, it's just not two parties in the country that stands up for diversity. When I was in an organization, and it was an African organization a few years back, the only party that delivered on what they were saying was the Conservative Party. And they were in power at the time. And they sent people to make sure that center was funded. And we had lots of people going through there, lots of politicians, but it was just talk. And Patrick, I'm really impressed with your message. And just stand firm. There's a lot of red meat throwing out there, but people that we need to have on board to win this election comes from anybody that can build a coalition of many people. And we should have a wide tent.
Yeah. And you know what, I'm going to add one point to that. My request today is help me build an inclusive Conservative Party. This does not tie you to having to vote for the Conservative Party in the next election. Frankly, I want to show you over the next 3 years that I earn your vote. This is to say no to extremism in this leadership, and watch how I do in the House of Commons, watch how I do as leader of the Conservative Party. If you feel that it's a party that fights for your interest and fights for the interest of all Canadians, then lend me your vote. What this is permission to try something different for conservatism in this country.
Guys, the way we can do that, I know people are here, is by signing up. If we don't sign up, we cannot get Patrick over there. We cannot get Mayor Brown over there. It's by signing up and lending our support that we believe he's got our back and we can have his back. And this is going based on what he has done. There's a template of these successes in the city of Brampton. And one critical one was Mayor Brown sending a letter to the Solicitor General, because in Peel Police, we've only had one black person serve in Peel Police. And I can tell you this, as somebody who's out there in the community, this is something we're pushing for. And Mayor Brown wrote to the Solicitor General, urging her to appoint a black person in Peel Police Board. I heard Joe talk about Surrey not having black people. See, we've gone past, prior to Mayor Brown coming, we didn't have access to City Hall. No, we did not. And I can tell you right now, and I've had my challenges with Mayor Brown in terms of saying, we need to get this done. And I can tell you, no other mayor in the history of Brampton has been able to achieve the things he has done as it pertains to us. Do we want more? Absolutely, you always want more. But we have to recognize that there are other people. So I speak from a true experience and what we've seen and what we've been able to do in the city of Brampton.
And it's what I should add to Eddie, who's is the BC organizer back in the campaign. Eddie's going to pass out my business card. You got a stack of them still, Eddie?
Yeah.
I got some here if you want to.
I'll get some more.
We're going to pass these out. This is my direct cell phone number. And one thing I've done in Brampton is we set up a WhatsApp group for the community, and I'm part of the WhatsApp group. Too often in politics is you sort of have barriers, you have someone in between, and you can't actually reach the people that are supposed to be your voice. And one thing that I take pride in doing in Brampton is I don't give out the office number, I don't give out my assistant's number, I give out my number, and you can text me, you can call me, and that way you've got a direct relationship. So take one of these cards and pass it back, and don't hesitate to stay in touch. We got a few more stops tonight, so if there's not any other questions.
If you have any question or want to take a picture with Mayor Brown.
You know, I know some of the challenges I face. I've been in business for over 10 years. I'm an employer, and I've contributed quite a bit to the Canadian economy in my own little ways, you know, but I've never really felt, you know, up until a few years ago, it was a bit of a challenge, you know, coming from what I do or what the business is all about or what we do, and getting an enabling environment to enable us grow and also do more business. Our business is international, okay? So not until we had to fight with the Trade Commission to create an enabling environment we were able to add to the Canadian economy in ways we have never had the opportunity to add before. And I'm not talking little money, I'm talking millions and millions of dollars. Ordinarily, these are businesses that would have gone to the United States like we've always done before, because it's always been a little bit easier to do that. So with you now trying to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and what would you do differently to create an enabling environment that makes it easier for people like myself and people also coming up that want to create that enable? Because when you do international business and being a minority, you have challenges and hurdles you have to go through, you know, whether it's getting access to financing or whether it's getting, you know, the right support from the government to create certain enabling environments that makes it possible. So with the small act, going back to what I was saying, with a small act from just a trade commissioner back in Lagos, it made it possible for Canada to benefit in excess of over about $20 to $30 million in water business, which ordinarily would not have come to Canada if he had not created that enabling environment. But we also find that him having left that position has also kind of now also taken away from that, because you don't have that continuity, you know? So what would you do differently to ensure that there's that enabling environment and that continuity to make it possible for people like us to do business and add and try to live that Canadian dream as well that everybody wants to prosper to live?
So, a friend in Brampton once told me, you want to be a good public servant, remember that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more than you talk. Yes. And so part of my goal would be to listen to businesses and see where government could be supportive of their ability to market their product to the world. We've had Team Canada missions to many countries. I don't recall there ever being a Team Canada mission to market to Nigeria. I would look at ways that we could diversify our trade relationship. I think right now we're far too reliant on just the United States. It's a global competition for jobs and investment, and Canada needs to understand that traditional boundaries, geographical boundaries mean less and less. And if you want a business to succeed, you need to make sure that the cost of production is easier in Canada. And so I look at the taxation rate, the red tape, but I also look at product to marketplace. How can you make it easier to get product to marketplace from the vantage point of Canada? And so really it's like a table. And if you pour water on a table and the table's tilted, it will go to the area that is lowest. And that's like investment. And that's like investment. The global investment will go to the areas where there's the path of least resistance. And so my goal is to create the path of least resistance for investment in Canada. I want to make it easy to grow a business, because if you have to choose whether you're going to grow your business in Surrey or Seattle, I want to make it easier to grow the business in Surrey. And there's not one component in terms of the cost. There's product to marketplace, there's labor, there's the regulatory burden, there's taxation. There are many components of the cost, the totality of cost. But my goal is to look at all those costs and to say, how can we together create a Canadian advantage? And access to capital is obviously part of that. Now I know we have to go to our next function, so maybe time for one more question, then we can take a photo.
So we'll take a picture. Yeah. No one has any more questions?
There's one last question, yeah, sure.
But I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a breath of fresh air for most of us. The way we're hearing, what we're hearing so far. But performance-wise, we're going to keep an eye on you. But one of the things I think is the biggest issue is continuity, as he said. That continuity of a black person goes into a position, fights, gets support, and then when he leaves, there's no replacement. There's no possible replacement. There's no continuity of that. How do you intend to sustain that? Is it going to be like a program that will be kind of a bringing up entrepreneur or leadership program for that culture to kind of bring, to sustain that continuity? Is that something?
I certainly think there's a lot more we could do on retraining, on mentorship, on apprenticeships, on secondments. There's lots of different ways that you can build that pipeline of talent. I know it exists in the community. I just think it needs to be given opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight.
Brown, you contesting for the leadership of the Conservative Party. The question is this: we represent our community. I know you said it just now. I want to look at the camera and tell our community what we want to do differently from the Conservative Party as we know in Canada, because people have always said Conservative Party is not inclusive. What do you want to do differently?
Well, I'm determined to make sure the Conservative Party looks like Canada, that is a mosaic, inclusive Conservative Party. And I've been doing this for 22 years in public service. I'm going to double down on the Canadian dream and celebrate immigration, celebrate diversity, and build a party that is embedded in the values of inclusion.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
It's Platform Media International.
Of course. I love Platform International. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're here listening to Mayor Patrick Brown, who is yearning for the leadership of Conservative Party of Canada. As you all can see, he has been pushing of inclusiveness in the Conservative Party, and he's here to talk to Africans about his agenda. And Mayor Brown has made very, very good points about making the Conservative Party change from being non-inclusive to inclusiveness, especially with the black people of Canada. And the Africans were highly represented here today by Nigerians, Ghanaians, Sierra Leoneans, and Liberians were in full attendance. And as you can see, the black people, the message he was trying to pass across resonated with us. And as some people have just said here, that liberals think that blacks are always there to be taken. This could change, given the message that Mayor Brown is giving.